In the last two sections, we put our CommentBox component together. Let's now take a look at some of the different tests that we want to write around this component. So back over here, we want to make sure that we have a test that confirms that there is a visible text area and a button that the user can interact with. We want to make sure that the user can enter some text into that text area and submit it. And then finally, we want to make sure that anytime the input gets submitted, or the form gets submitted for that matter, the text area itself should be emptied, so no more text inside there. So with that in mind, one of the first things that we need to decide, and we'll get around to making our test file here in just a moment, but before we do that, we need to decide which of these three enzyme handlers right here we're going to use to actually test out this application. So remember, these three methods right here, or these three renderers of sorts, are the three different ways that we have of testing a component when we're making use of enzyme. We can render out that entire component as static HTML. We can render out just that component by itself and no children underneath it. And we can also do the full DOM, which will attempt to render that component and all of its children as well. Now this is another time where, well, you know what, we don't really have any other components underneath this comment box. The comment box has no children whatsoever. So I think we could definitely get away with using the shallow renderer here. However, just to get some variety of experience, we're going to arbitrarily decide to use that full DOM render here instead. Now, the only reason we're doing this is just to show you, as you're taking this course and learning about testing, how the full DOM render works. But if I was doing this testing of this application by myself as a personal or professional project, I might use the shallow render because I only care about testing this current component and no children underneath it. But again, I want to make sure that you get a good idea of how this thing works, so we're going to take this alternate approach this time around. So with that in mind, we're going to flip back over to our code editor, and we'll get started by creating a new test file. So inside of my __ test directory, I'm going to make a new file called CommentBox.test.js. So inside of here, we're going to have all the code related to testing our CommentBox component. To get started, we'll import React at the very top, and I'll import the CommentBox component as well. And oops, I'm using a relative path right here. Remember, we have enabled absolute paths, so I can write out components/CommentBox like so. All right, so that looks good. Now our first test, as we were just talking about it, where is it? Right here. We want to write a test that makes sure that we get a text area and a button inside of our component. So for my very first it statement that I'm going to write out, I'll say it, and then I'll pass in my string description, and I'll say it has a text area and a button. That's it. That's all I care about telling anyone who's reading this test, because that's all we're trying to test inside of here. So let's take a quick pause right here. When we come back to the next section, we'll start filling out the implementation of this test.